Death Mage Volume 11 Character Summary Part 2.
Tackard Alcrum, human, 60 years old male.
This is the first spring of Tackard's 60s, as his birthday is in October. He has recently been through many trying things. Two of his close subordinates have become fanatical followers of Vandalyu. Another of them turned out to be a mimic human, and he has been trying to deal with a series of bizarre murders in his duchy. As a result, he has been losing hair rapidly, and his stomach is frequently irritated. However, he cannot be said to be the biggest victim of this volume. The fact that the Knight of Collapsed Mountains and his family were mimic humans would have been true even if Vandalyu never visited the duchy. The same goes for the fact that their creator, the evil god of cannibalism Zurzorgen, would have made his move to achieve his ambitions in several centuries' time. With the revelation of the true identity of Goldie and his family, and the destruction of Zurzorgen, the impending destruction looming over the Alcrum Duchy in several centuries' time was prevented. Tackard ended up joining forces with the Demon King, but the Demon King's blessing, the V-Cream, has brought Tackard's scalp, which was on the path to ruin, new late spring sprouts. He was anxious about Juliana, but has now promised not to meddle with her matters, and he has decided to align his duchy with Vita fundamentalism instead of Alda's peaceful faction. He is the first of the Orbam Kingdom's 12 dukes to join forces with Vandalyu.
Bravatiyu, human, 65 years old male.
His hair and beard are both completely white, but he is a spirited old knight who, unlike Tackard, is showing no signs of balding. He has always been hot-blooded since he was young, but he has become overly suspicious with age and often spouts baseless conspiracy theories. But as he possesses no information network of his own, does not have exceptional deductive skills, and is not particularly perceptive, his reasoning is rarely correct. These conspiracy theories cause trouble for his master Tackard, but despite being over 60 years old, he remains the Knight of Roaring Flames, one of the 5 Knights of Alcrum, because his strength in battle is equivalent to that of an A-class adventurer, and because of his loyalty to Tackard. Goldie said that he was no more than the average standard of the 5 Knights of Alcrum, but looking at it another way, Bravatiyu still possesses strength that meets the average standard in spite of his age. He is a proficient swordsman, and, as his title suggests, he enchants his sword with magical flames in battle. He prays to Alda, but only because his master Tackard does so. Now that Tackard has converted to Vita's faith, Bravatiyu will likely follow suit. Bravatiyu hails from a house of earls whose lineage can be traced back to the Alcrum Kingdom, before it became the Alcrum Duchy. His house is managed by his son,
Sergio, human, 27 years old male.
the youngest of the 5 Knights of Alcrum, the Knight of Distant Thunder. He usually speaks in a polite but sarcastic tone, but his tone of speech becomes rougher in times of emergency and during battle. He distinguished himself in his knight's order in his youth and became one of the 5 Knights of Alcrum in his 20s, but is a problematic youth who calls Bravatiyu, who is far senior to him, old man, and once tried to flirt with Balderia, the oldest of the 5 Knights, having mistaken her for an apprentice maid. However, his loyalty is true, and he is prepared to give his life for the Duke's house at any moment. He is from a family that has historically produced numerous great individuals who became a part of the 5 Knights of Alcrum, and he bears the pride of his house. That was why he felt a sense of fellowship with Goldie, whose family was the most recent to accept a bride from Sergio's house, but like Bravatiyu, he likes to use a combination of physical combat techniques and magic, but he is most proficient at the lightning attacks that he conjures at a distance with wind attribute spells. The reach of these attacks is greater than that of a bow, and that is why he is known as the Knight of Distant Thunder. His family is a house of viscounts, and he is actually the head. Incidentally, he is single.
Ralma, human, 31 years old male.
One of the 5 Knights of Alcrum, the Knight of Keen Insight. However, other than for ceremonies, he prefers wearing light equipment like that of a scout rather than a suit of armor. His favorite weapons are also daggers and other weapons that are easily carried rather than something like a sword. He is unusual among the five knights in that he was originally a part of the intelligence organization that serves the Duke, which is why he uses such equipment. This demon eye is an inferior version of the demon eye of analysis, which allows the user to see the target's entire status with a single glance, but they are still extremely valuable, as almost nobody possesses the demon eye of analysis. Two humans with this skill existing in the same period of time is unusual. Three such humans existing simultaneously is extraordinary. Ralmaya used the plentiful sandwich Sandy, one of the members of the Alcrum food cart pentagram, as a pawn in his plan without Sandy realizing it. He had her cross paths with Vandalyu and instigate a peaceful duel. It was a clever plan. However, by looking at Vandalyu with his demon eye, Ralmaya fell victim to the abyss skill. Abnormal effects on his mind were caused by coming into contact with Vandalyu's deformed soul, resulting in him becoming a fully fledged fanatical follower of Vandalyu. There were also changes to his appearance, including the healing of skin damage and reversing of some signs of age, but his hair remains white. His pupils dilate when he is speaking of Vandalyu, and it seems that his physical capabilities are increasing as a result of Vandalyu's guidance. However, the fact that he has sworn loyalty to the Alcrum house has not changed. He has simply changed his religious beliefs to worship Vandalyu. With the demon eye of appraisal, he has come into contact with Vandalyu's status, as well as the most important and confidential information in the demon empire of Vidal, the body measurements and weights of Darsha, Keisha, Gizania, Prival, and Muse. However, Vandalyu has forgiven him on the condition that he does not share this information with anyone else. Ralmaya feels a great sense of superiority and devotion to Vandalyu from the fact that he has been allowed to keep his knowledge of his secrets. Originally an orphan, he is the only one of the five knights who is not a noble. His ability in combat was previously barely equivalent to that of a B-class adventurer, but with his improved physical abilities from the effects of Vandalyu's guidance, it has slightly improved.
Baldiria, dwarf, 78 years old, female.
One of the five knights of Alcrum, the Knight of 1,000 Blades. She is the oldest of the five knights and has the most experience as a knight. Her title originates from the fact that she possesses a variety of combat-related skills, not just axe technique, and is particularly proficient at using martial skills that unleash attacks in quick succession. Her offensive power exceeds that of Bravatiyu. However, she is of short stature because she is a dwarf, and has a childish face as well, so she is often mistaken for an apprentice maid when she is not wearing her armor. Her appearance was a complex for her when she was younger, but since she is now in her 70s, she has long since stopped caring about it. Even if newly appointed knights and soldiers mistake her for an apprentice maid, she does not get angry. She laughs and tells them that she will see them for training later and lets them get away with just a little stricter training than the others. When Sergio was still a newly appointed knight, he once attempted to hit on her with the lines, "Hey, the nice lady over there. How about having a cup of tea with me, just do your work later?" Baldiria happily replied, "I'll spend as many days with you as you want, not just a cup of tea," and imposed 7 days of harsh training on him. The training was so harsh that ordinary rookies would have admitted defeat after a single day of it, but seeing Sergio persist through the entirety of it, she decided that he had potential, wrote a letter of recommendation for him to the Duke, and supported him in secret. Formally, Baldiria was a part of the all-female troupe of knights, led by Juliana. However, Baldiria was one of the 5 knights and Juliana's social standing was complicated, so Baldiria kept her distance, thinking that getting too close to her would bring about unwanted consequences. Unbeknownst even to her master, Baldiria attempted to persuade Goldie to turn himself in because of her sense of companionship with the others of the 5 knights, and because she felt pity for his wife and child, although Goldie, his wife and his child had all turned out to be mimic humans. Baldiria has also been guided by Vandalyu after her life was saved by Darsha, making her another fanatical follower of Vandalyu. She views Darsha with utmost respect. She is from a house of earls, but she is the 3rd daughter, not the head of the house. Her older brother is the current head. She married into the Redgorder family, another house of dwarf nobles with the court rank of earl, but she is a widow. Her husband was lost in a battle with monsters. Her daughter is currently a countess, despite not yet being of age.
Sandy Human, 35 years old, female.
Sandy is a member of the Alcram food cart pentagram, with the title of Plentiful Sandwich. She is a woman with a good physique, and while she is not a bad person, she is quick to make assumptions. She claims that she was a thin, beautiful girl in the past, but became fat after marrying her husband, who ran a sandwich cart on his own. Unaware that this was a part of Ralmaya's plan, she challenged Vandalyu to a cooking duel. She put up a good effort, and the duel ended with a handshake and praise of each other's efforts. The other members of the Alcram food cart pentagram are the Soup on a Whim Sing, the Red Hot Rice Papyrus, the Chaos Rice Ball Mickham, and the Sweet Sweet Sweets Tom.
Bashes, goddess of rain clouds.
A wind attribute god who reached godhood approximately 50,000 years ago. She was not a hero on the battlefield like Fitun. She was chosen by Nineroad because she saved many people by warning them of ill omens through her weather forecasts and divination. She is a goddess who warns of ominous things, but the people later misunderstood her to be the goddess who rules over ominous things. She is a goddess who rules over the rain and encourages cultivation and good harvests, but many worshippers associate her with damage-causing rains and storms and treat her as a cursed god. She was aware of Arthur and his talent before she gave him her divine protection. He never sought her divine protection, and her divine protection wouldn't have been of any use for him in changing the environment he was in. She expected it would only cause the villagers to fear him more, so she never gave it to him. However, after the god of law and fate Alda ordered the gods serving him to raise heroes, Bashes considered several candidates, but could not think of a reason to give her divine protection to one of them over Arthur, so she gave it to him. The situation then changed completely after she became guided by Vandalyu, and Arthur left the village after meeting Miriam. She reached out to Zelziria and Hamel, who also had doubts in Alda, made a plan to change sides and join Vita's faction, and succeeded.
Zelziria, goddess of dark nights.
Although Zelziria is a goddess who rules over dark nights, she is not an evil god. She is a respectable light attribute goddess. In Lambda, darkness is considered to be the state of an absence of light, and an aspect of the light attribute. Statues and religious images depict her as a gloomy but beautiful woman, and her role is to protect the people on dark nights when the moon and stars don't shine. However, she is also often considered to be a patron deity of prostitutes and the goddess of good sleep. She is also used in legends as a goddess who tests innocent travelers and monks by trying to seduce them. Perhaps for these reasons, she acquired the image of a wicked woman after her death. Her positive aspect was already covered by Mil, the goddess of slumber, who already had a long history. Few people worship her. Now, there are almost no temples that are mainly dedicated to the worship of Zelziria. At most, she is depicted in carvings as one of Alda's subordinate gods. Zelziria considered this to be a result of the role that the people wanted her to play and quietly continued to do her duties to maintain the world's existence, but she was greatly bewildered by Alda's command to raise a hero. The majority of her scarce believers were prostitutes, women of the night, so to speak. They were not adventurers and knights who wanted to be heroes. She could not send a person who had never fought a battle in their life to fight against the Demon King. With this in mind, she never selected a believer to grant her divine protection. The other gods never paid her any attention, so her actions were never noticed. After some time passed, Bashes, whom she had spoken to before because she was another social outcast among the gods, reached out to her. She then decided to join Vita's faction and granted Kalinia her divine protection.
Hamel, god of shadows.
Hamel was originally a familiar spirit created by Alda with no personality of his own. After his birth, he gained experience, developed his own personality, and ascended to godhood. Thus, he was born long before gods like Bashes and Fitun. He is a god with an undefined gender, and his teachings are not very clear. It may be more accurate to say that he exists to carry out the role of a god who rules over shadows rather than for the purpose of ruling over shadows. Naturally, there are almost no temples that are mainly dedicated to worshipping Hamel. He only makes small appearances in the carvings found at the temples of other gods. Thus, he has few worshippers, and when he received Alda's order to raise a hero, he hesitated to select someone as a potential hero. Just like Zelziria, though he may have obeyed Alda's order if it had been to grant a divine protection to a potential hero chosen by one of the other gods. Bashas reached out to him, and he decided to join Vita's faction and grant his divine protection to Borzafoy.
Borgedon, god of mountains.
After the 11 great gods created the world of Lambda, Borgedon existed as a spirit of the earth, but Botan, mother of the earth and goddess of craftsmanship, raised him to godhood. Thus, he is technically a god of nature and without gender, though people do consider him to be a male god. In the Age of the Gods, people would use entire mountains and oddly shaped boulders found on mountains as objects to personify, pray to, and worship him. Only in religious images is he depicted as a large, sturdy man with his face concealed by a shadow. Borgedon fought alongside the champions against the army led by the Demon King, but he was heavily wounded in battle. At the same time, the evil god of cannibalism Zurzorjin and the evil god of pillaging Forzagibal began their conflict in the sky over the mountains. Farmon Gold, one of the champions, took advantage of this and heavily wounded both of them. Seeing this, Borgedon decided to seal the evil gods away along with himself and charged at them, knowing that he would not be able to fight any longer due to the severeness of his own wounds. The mountains crumbled and he succeeded in sealing Zurzorjin and Forzagibal away, or least, it appeared that way, but he was instead assimilated by Zurzorjin. His consciousness blacked out, and the next thing he knew, he was inside Vandalu's mouth, having been rescued like a helpless damsel in distress despite being a god. After learning that Zurzorjin stole his name for over 100,000 years, he lost all confidence in himself. Zurzorjin used Borgedon's name to pretend to be one of the gods of Alda's forces, but Borgedon was never a part of either Alda's forces or Vita's faction. By the time Alda and Vita parted ways and fought against one another, Borgedon had already been assimilated by Zurzorjin. However, Borgedon's sense of values is similar to Botan's, who chose Hillwillow as her champion, a creation-oriented champion like Zakart. He also feels gratitude towards Vandalu for saving him, so he has aligned himself with Vita's faction for now. Borgedon made this decision because he considers the fact that Vandalu fought against Zurzorjin while defending the city of Alcrum as a significant thing. According to the fabricated story created by Vandalu, Borgedon sealed the evil god away once more, and the people give their thanks and prayers to him as a result, and that makes him feel a little guilty.
Randolph, elf, years old male.
Randolph has entered the city of Morksey in disguise to see what kind of person Vandalu is with his own eyes. He is disguised as a blue-haired elf bard named Rudolph. While he was away, an unimaginable situation occurred in the capital of Alcrum, more than 2 weeks' worth of travel away from Morksey, and he only learned of the events that transpired after everything was already over. He was aware of the face-staring demon, but he let the matter be because the only victims were criminals, and he hadn't received any request to deal with it.
Goldie mimic human, years old.
One of the 5 knights of Alcrum with the title of Knight of the Collapsed Mountains. He belonged to a family that existed since long before the foundation of the Orbam Kingdom and a mid-empire. A family that protected the seal on Forzagibal while praying to Borgedon in the sacred wastelands. He was granted the court rank of Earl, and the sacred wastelands and the surrounding area were considered his land, but he did none of the things that ordinary noblemen do. He protected the Alcrum Duchy as a knight and a clergyman. That was the person he was to the public, but in truth he was a mimic human, a monster created by Zurzorjin. Mimic humans were able to mimic humans, elves, and dwarves. However, they were unable to mimic members of Vita's races, whose bodies have parts that differ significantly from humans, such as Arachne, Lamia, and Scylla. Like humans, mimic humans were able to gain jobs, but as a side effect of that, their ranks were a fixed, low number. They were monsters that specialized in mimicking humans. However, after Zurzorjin assimilated Forzagibal, the entire mimic human race gained the ability to steal the skills of others. As skills are engraved in the souls of those who possess them, it is normally impossible to steal them, but by consuming a certain portion of their target's bodies, Mimic humans were able to steal the surface layer of the souls, where the skills are engraved, transplanting that layer to their own souls and stealing them. It was a powerful ability that allowed them to steal any skill, but that is why the conditions needed to steal skills were difficult to meet. The target needed to have a soul residing in its body. In other words, it needed to be alive. On top of that, in order to steal a skill from a human-sized creature, a mimic human needed to consume at least half a limb. Mimic humans were able to choose which skills to steal to some extent, but they had no ability to see the status of their targets. Thus, they had to make these choices with broad parameters such as the combat-related skill with the highest level, or the most often used magic-related skill. This is why they would fail to steal skills from enemies that were stronger than them, unless they used a surprise attack. That was the kind of monster that mimic humans were, and they protected Alcrum in order to conceal Zurzorgen and their own identity, and to make the humans worship Zurzorgen, who was disguised as Borgedin. Every Knight of the Collapsed Mountains was a mimic human like Goldie, and those acting as their wives and children were all mimic humans as well. The Sacred Wastelands were a mimic human nest. Humans would marry into the family or join them as priests, but the mimic humans protected their secret by killing such individuals and replacing them with mimic humans. Under Zurzorgen's orders, Goldie carried out crimes imitating the face-staring demon, along with a mimic human that acted as his partner, spreading unrest in the capital of Alcrum and shaking the people's faith in Alda, the god of law and fate. He also successfully stole from Vandalyu the skill that made him the Demon King, as well as the magic of an attribute that only he could use. He succeeded in this, but unexpected events followed this, including the fact that Vandalyu attempted to kill him without any hesitation, but even so, he was able to split himself and send the Demon King skill to Zurzorgen. However, he was defeated by Darsha and the others after that. After Zurzorgen's destruction, Vandalyu and Takkard manipulated the information released to the public. According to the story they fabricated, the face-staring demon attacked the villa and Goldie fought him. After that, he died in the battle between the manifested evil god and Borgedin. His remains could not be recovered, and his broken treasured sword was buried in his coffin, and that is the story the public knows. His funeral is scheduled to be held at a later date. Incidentally, the Satan blood mimic slime Kuhul mimicked Goldie and played his role during Vandalyu's fabricated show for the people. It was an ironic outcome, with a mimic human being mimicked.
Zurzorgen, evil god of cannibalism.
An evil god who was a part of the Demon King's army and created mimic humans, monsters that could mimic humans. At the time, the monsters created by the Demon King's army did not possess intelligence or special abilities, and qualities like strength and toughness were emphasized. Thus, Zurzorgen was quite unusual to have created monsters that specialized in disguise. That allowed him to successfully claim a significant achievement, but once humanity's numbers had dwindled rapidly, there were no more weaknesses for mimic humans to take advantage of, and he was subsequently attacked by the evil god of pillaging Forzigible, who saw this as a moment of weakness. Farmon used the opportunity of the conflict between the two of them to cut both evil gods down, and Borgedin charged at Zurzorgen as well. However, Zurzorgen assimilated Forzigible and regained enough strength to absorb Borgedin as well when he charged in. After that, he pretended to have been sealed away, assumed Borgedin's identity, and spent more than 100,000 years in hiding. Once his power was fully recovered, he intended to assimilate the gods of Alda's forces, the gods of Vita's faction, and the remnants of the Demon King's army, until he became Lambda's only god. He would then act as both god and Demon King, allowing the people to flourish to a certain degree, while also inflicting an equivalent amount of suffering upon them and controlling their numbers. His ambition was to continue this cycle and rule over Lambda forever. However, Zurzorgen was forced to change his plans due to the appearance of Vandalyu in Morksey, one of the Alcrum Duchy's cities. There was the possibility that Vandalyu would take an interest in the Sacred Wastelands, where fragments of the Demon King and evil gods were sealed away, revealing the identity of the mimic humans and the fact that the Borgedin being worshipped there was a fake. Even if Vandalyu didn't take notice of Zurzorgen, Alda and the gods who served him certainly would have. Thus, rather than simply hope that the storm would pass, Zurzorgen involved Vandalyu in his plan and sped up its schedule. He stole the Demon King's skill from Vandalyu, bringing the fragments of the Demon King under his complete control.
He then intended to assimilate Vandalyu, who was weakened after losing the Demon King and Dark King magic skills, gain his powers, and fight the rest of the gods.
That was his plan, but Vandalyu wasn't as weakened as Zurzorgen imagined he would be, and Zurzorgen ended up being defeated at Vandalyu's hands. In his final moments, his body was taken over by the small piece of Vandalyu's soul that he had assimilated along with the Demon King's skill, and Vandalyu consumed him.
In the world where he was born, he ruled over a race of creatures that regularly practiced cannibalism.
At the time, he was not a particularly powerful god, and his mimicking ability was a technique that he acquired in order to make up for his weakness and survive.
Forzigible evil god of pillaging.
The god who may be the most unfortunate character in this volume. He was assimilated by Zurzorgen, who ended up trying to use his soul as bait to feed Vandalyu, and so he was destroyed when his soul was consumed. However, in the farce that took place afterwards, the public was told that the enormous golem that was once Zurzorgen's vessel was actually Forzigible, so one could say that Forzigible stole Zurzorgen's appearance.
In the world where he was born, he ruled over a race of creatures that stole the territory and nests of others. After becoming a god, he considered stealing from others to be the greatest pleasure, and he was one of the generals of the Demon King's army who was greatly excited by the prospect of invading and stealing the world of Lambda from the humans.
Thus, if it were him that escaped from Borgeddon's charging attack rather than Zurzorgen, he would likely have shown himself again soon afterwards and been sealed away properly.
Urgent Tarkatanis, human, 65 years old.
The Prime Minister who rules the royal realm of the Orbam Kingdom, which is also known as Orbam Central.
There are many who consider him to be the effective head of the Orbam Kingdom's politics, not the king. He appears to be aware of the threat that Vandalyu poses, but precisely speaking, it is unclear as to whether he really is.
He believes that maintaining the Orbam Kingdom's society as it is now is justice, and in order to achieve that, he would not hesitate to sacrifice those who suffer under the current system.
Ordinarily, he would not be welcoming of Alda's peaceful faction, but it seems that he considers that to be a far better alternative to the Vita fundamentalism preached by Vandalyu and his companions.
Father Dalmud, human, 53 years old, male.
A person who looks like a good-natured person in appearance. He is easily recognized by his plump physique and his mustache that resembles the whiskers of a catfish. Although he doesn't look like a military man, he holds the position of marshal and doesn't trust any information other than that gathered by himself and his own subordinates. He is the legal guardian of Rudel Sauron, and it is he who advised him to sacrifice the resistance. He is also able to make contact with Randolph through his great-grandmother, although he has never actually met her.
He tends to judge people based on whether or not he is able to use them, and is a rationalist, or rather, a self-interested person who pretends to be one.
He has only recently taken notice of Vandalyu's existence, but his attention is focused on him, as he suspects that there is more to him than meets the eye. Incidentally, he once led a knight's order when he was younger, and his prowess in combat and his leadership were praised as first-rate. However, there were problems with the way he did things, and he was promoted to a post that did not involve directly commanding knights and soldiers within less than a year.
Joseph Smith, human, 33 years old, male.
On Earth, his name was Sumida Shiro. He was a teacher and a colleague of Murakami's. He has been reincarnated as the druid Joseph Smith.
He was trying to go to university and use his ability for plant research when the Bravers were formed, and he was made to join them.
After that, he was traumatized by the gruesome disaster sites he came across, and he retired from the dangerous frontlines after suffering even more mental scars from battles with terrorists.
This is why he was not present in the final battle against the 8th Guidance. After his retirement from the front lines, he engaged in work where he would not be a part of combat, such as rebuilding and agricultural support while undergoing counseling. However, he has recovered from his mental wounds after encountering Vandalyu in his dreams and receiving a piece of his soul.
In the Amamiya residence, he met Banda and learned of what Rikudu truly is.
Katie Hartner, human, 4 years old, female.
The little girl who is the reincarnation of the Urther K. Mackenzie.
Before her memories and personality returned, she was an innocent little lady, but she is now aware that her life is in even more of a hard mode than her previous life. Rodcourt requested that she kill Vandeleu, but she refused, so Rodcourt had her reincarnated as a member of the Hartner family, which has a history with Vandeleu. However, she still has no intention of doing what Rodcourt wants her to. She believes that it would be best to make peace with Vandeleu while keeping the lives of her family in this life safe.
She will likely become very shocked and stressed once she sees the Hartner family's past using Urther, and it is unclear as to whether she will be able to withstand that shock and stress.
Rankings. Japanese symbol I cup. Belmond. Eisen. Quinn. Princess Levia.
Japanese symbol H cup.
Darsha. Teria.
Bastia.
Valkyrie legions. Gina. Cornelia. Gizania.
Japanese symbol G cup. Sila.
Isis legion. Iris.
Rapiacege. Japanese symbol F cup.
Eleonora. Saria.
Magissa.
Kalinia Nu.
Jail.
Rita. Japanese symbol E cup. Paraveil. Amuse. Xeris.
Ereshkigal legion.
Orbia.
Japanese symbol D cup.
Keisha. Bilda.
Baldirias Nu.
Izanami legions.
Japanese symbol C cup. Kanako Tsuchiya.
Melissa J. Sayatome.
Privel.
Natania. Minuma Hitomi legions.
Japanese symbol B cup. Vestra.
Aniwaka.
Zandia.
Zadiris. Pluto legions. Miriam's new. Japanese symbol A cup. Povina rank ups. Baba Yaga legions. Gyufidgarn vessel.
Ya cup. Shade legion.
Japanese symbol AAA cup. Juliana. Impossible to measure honorary consultants, Yamada and Tiamat. Povina's ranking has improved, and newcomers Miriam, Baldiria, and Kalinia have joined the rankings. Jessie, Holly, Bashes, and Zelziria are not in the rankings as Jessie is unaware that they exist. Holly declined to be a part of it, and Bashes and Zelziria currently do not inhabit vessels.
The development of Talishheim. Total population including the Demon Continent. Approximately 73,000, approximately 23,000 in Talishheim, 50,000 on the Demon Continent.
Ghouls, undead, black goblins, Anubises, Orcuses, Titans, humans, beastkin, dwarves, Scylla, half-elves, elves, lizardmen, Armins, vampires, Skogsra, Leshy, Gehenna bees, Kurujin, Marujin, Lamia, Draconids, Kijin, Harpies, Centaurs, Merfolk, Chaos elves, noble orcs, high kobolds, high goblins, Magin, Arachne, Impusa, dark humans, dark beastkin, Diverger, half-minotaurs. Golems and cursed weapons are not included in the population.
The migration of the Dark Elves in the western region of the continent has just begun.
Facilities in Talishheim. Mercury Mirror Golems. Explorers Guild Trading Post, Distribution Center, Job-Changing Room.
Church of Vita with statues of Vita's subordinate gods, the gods of her faction, Zeruworn, Ricklint, Xantark, and Farmon.
Public bathhouses. Carts of all kinds.
Publicly managed casino. Immortal Ent Forest has had Gant Ents planted, Skogsra and Leshy proliferating.
Golem factories of all kinds.
Monster plant fields.
Training dummy grounds, inhabited by undead heroes from Alda's faction.
Theater.
Artistic paintings that remain in the minds of those who view them. Entire paintings cannot be viewed except from the sky. The Root of Life. Group housing facilities for immigration applicants.
Dormitory for immigrants from human societies. Talishheim Castle.
Gehenna B Castle. Enormous statue of Vandalu under construction. B-Class Dungeon X2, +1. C-Class Dungeon X2, D-Class Dungeon X3, E-Class Dungeon X1. Dungeon for cultivating pine trees for wine X1. Amusement Beach Dungeon.
Dungeon for fishing industry.
Dungeon to temporarily house demon army, attached to Vandalu's underground workshop.
Marshlands Lizardmen District.
Capricorn Farm.
Capricorn Milking Factory.
Explorers Guild Branch. Small Shrine to Fitterg, the dragon god of 5 sins. Mental Encroachment Stone Circle. D-Class Dungeon X1, B-Class Dungeon X1.
Marshlands Scylla District.
Paddy Fields, demon ducks being used for farming.
Mud Bath Hot Springs.
Small Shrine to Maribeville, the heroic goddess of the Scylla. Explorers Guild Branch.
Huge Capybara Farm. Duck Farm.
Mental Encroachment Stone Circle. Small Dungeon for Teleportation. Sauron Liberation Front Base, former Scylla territory. Mental Encroachment Stone Circle. Automatic Undead Creating Magic Circle, used to recycle members of Duke Marm's army. D-Class Dungeon. Small Dungeon for Teleportation. Main Station of the Dark Knight Knights Order. Crude Quality Undead Army.
Dark Continent. Xantark's Temporary Divine Realm.
City. Hot Springs. Enormous statue of Vandalu under construction. Dungeons X countless number.
Temporary facilities. Notchin Concert Arena. Sam's Job-Changing Room.
Nations within the boundary mountain range under the influence of the dark dream demon creation path. Nations personally visited by Vandalu. Noble Orc Kingdom population, approximately 100,000.
Zanalpadna population, approximately 100,000.
Ghoul Nation population, approximately 5,000.
High Kobold Nation population, approximately 16,000. High Goblin Nation population, approximately 10,000.
Magin Nation population, approximately 100,000, of which approximately 1,000 are Magin. Kijin Nation population, approximately 10,000. Draconid Nation population, approximately 5,000. Centaur Nation population, approximately 15,000. Harpy Nation population, approximately 27,000. Lamia Nation population, approximately 20,000. Dark Elf Nation population, approximately 10,000.
Vita's Resting Grounds.
Merfolk Nation population, approximately 40,000. Unofficially allied nations.
Alcrim Duchy.